So thank you all for joining us. My name is Nikki. I'm the Director of Training with PRPS. This is, I think, our second summer camp roundtable? We do have an outdoor summer camp roundtable scheduled for next week. That is specifically geared towards summer camps that are completely outdoors and/or programs that are gearing towards changing to outdoors. So this one is general. What's happening? Where are we? Have we made decisions? And just we're hitting general topics. So the thing that we decided to do from last time is the group created a summer camp Google Doc, and I was able to look at it this morning, and some interesting stuff that I saw is so far it looks like most summer camps are still, and I'm going to go ahead and pause real quick. I'm going to mute everyone. If you want to speak up, please feel free to unmute yourself and do so. If you have questions or comments and you don't feel like speaking up, you can use the chat box. We're good either way. You can raise your hand, but I will say there are 4 pages worth of individuals, so I may not see your hand raised, so the chat box might be your best option. Okay, so everyone's muted. Just a reminder, unmute yourself or use the chat box. So what I did see from the Google Doc, and again, I will put that link up so everyone has access to update the information and see what other organizations are doing. But so far, I've not seen anyone who have canceled their programs. If you have, please let us know. But it looks like most people are waiting till the second week of May to make that decision. So I thought a good first question for us would be, you know, since there's only a handful of answers in the Google Doc at this point, what are some of you doing? Has anyone canceled? Is the second week of May looking what you're doing right now? Are you delaying the start of your program? How is that looking for you? And remember, if you want to answer, please unmute yourself or use the chat box. I do see that Tom said that Tom Stein mentioned that Cheltenham Township canceled all pool and camp programs. So that's the first one we've heard so far. And Westchester has canceled everything through the end of May. So if you want to go ahead, unmute yourself and speak up. Probably better to hear your voice than my voice.
So I'll just come in on that one. We actually met with our rec board last night, and all of our programming is housed in and around the school district. So our childcare program is in the school buildings and things like that. So the decision that they've made as of right now is to follow the guideline that the governor put out for schools, which is that the buildings need to remain closed until the last academic day. And then unless something changes, we're allowed to open up the buildings for summer programming the following, like, Monday after academics end. So tentatively, we have a green light to start recruiting for our summer program starting June 8th, with the caveat, obviously, that if things go haywire, you know, and that gets changed, then we have to change to go with it. But as of right now, our plan is to run at least our childcare program starting June 8th and for the full 10 weeks that we plan to run it. Aquatics are a little trickier. They've taken the opportunity of having school closed to drain the pools and clean them and fix them. So they will be up probably in sometime in July. And I think our aquatic director is planning to try to start swim lessons and things like that in July. As for our outdoor programming, playgrounds and things, I think that's a little trickier because we have to get cooperation from the boroughs, you know, as to whether or not they're going to allow us to even use like playground equipment through the summer. So, but childcare and aquatics are a go for June and July, respectively.
Great.
So far, fingers crossed, you know, that's what we think we're going to do.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Melissa, what municipality are you with?
I work for the Blue Mountain Rec Commission. So it's a conglomeration of 9 municipalities plus the school district.
One of the, some of the chat box text had mentioned waiting on ACA and CDC guidelines. One thing I did want to mention is I called ACA earlier this week to see if we could get someone to either join a roundtable or do a webinar for us. So if we're able to coordinate that, we will make sure that everyone in this group knows. Specifically, I was hoping that they'd be able to talk to us about what guidelines they're working with or will be providing for ACA accredited camps. And even though not all of us are accredited, it would still have good information that we might be able to follow. So if we're able to secure that, or if anyone else has a contact that I might be able to reach out to locally, please let me know. Anyone else as far as where their summer camp decision is at this time?
Ken Lear at West Goshen. Our supervisors on Tuesday wanted an answer about summer camp. I was able to buy a little bit of time telling them that basically I want to get more expert feedback. I mean, here we're in an area where we do rely on the health experts, on expertise beyond our own. Basically indicated that we would need some modifications no matter what if it does happen. Basically I have until the second week of May to come up with a report of either how it would proceed or cancel.
Okay.
Hi, Nikki. This is Dan from PRPS Training, Dan Hendy. I just put out a real quick poll. For those of you who have seen it on your screen, but some of you are on phone, I'll just share the results. The question was, what is the outlook for your summer camp program? 6% said they were canceling. 19% said they were delaying. 48% said they were modifying the program in some way, and 26% said they were sticking to the original schedule. So that gives you a basis for a start on these discussions. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. I looked for you and I wasn't sure you were on. I was going to ask you to do a poll, so I appreciate that.
Hi, Nikki. Can I just pile on here?
Absolutely.
Okay, this is Eloise Pete, and I'm with Ross Township. So we are the first municipality north of the city of Pittsburgh. So, you know, we're in a high population density area, but I know that this is going to be sort of a regional thing that we're dealing with, even just from the state guidelines. So I'm kind of wondering, so we normally hold our summer camp at North Hills School, which we cannot do. I wasn't even expecting. I called the superintendent and said, you know, I'm not even going to ask you for that. I'll try to figure something else out, a workaround. So fortunately, I mean, we have the good fortune to have different buildings at our disposal. Ross is a pretty big community. So I think we can do it as long as we're keeping with the number of people in one place guideline. You know, that's what I was kind of concerned about. So I don't know, like my question is, A, should we start to try to work regionally to have like almost like task forces for our, within the PRPS, but you know, because it is going to, the rollout of phase 2 and 3 is probably going to be a different timing. Like, I just think this is all about timing. I don't know if anybody else is, you know, thinking along those lines.
What is that?
We're having camp. I mean, you know, from my perspective, we need to do this. It's an essential service. I don't know how our parents, they rely on our camp. It's 8 weeks, it's full time. We have teachers involved. I mean, oh, I did the presentation last PRPS conference on summer camp. So, you know, it's our really one of our flagship programs. So I'm very invested in keeping camp going. I don't think we're going to have another program in the building. We might do some outdoor yoga and things, but we're not going to do any other programming, just so we can carve out the space safely for the, you know, it's really essential childcare.
I see that Greg has his hand raised. So Greg, I just unmuted you if you wanted to comment on that.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out how to run our summer camp. Between social distancing, I'm from Kingston, Pennsylvania, up by Wilkes-Barre. We run it out of our rec center, and we have members that come in all the time. We accept 80 children. It is an essential thing, like she said, for families. We're probably the cheapest camp actually in our area, and we try to keep it that way for parents. I've talked to the local JCC, the local YMCA, the local CYC, and they have no idea if they're going to run theirs or if they're going to change their dates. Sterilization of stuff, everybody knows children touch everything, including each other. So we're trying to figure out how to do social distancing and how to clean after them. It's looking like we're going to have to put almost a second staff on just to clean up, wipe things down, wipe the gym down, wipe tables down, whatever, chairs. So, you know, does anybody have thoughts on any of that stuff? Have they looked into it yet?
I see.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Eloise.
So we're looking into getting one of those electrostatic sprayers because it's like 99.9% coverage, and you can get them they're not the $5,000 models that say our EMS has, but you know they're a little bit less expensive that you can, you know, because cleaning is going to be essential. You're going to have to do it every night. So what we were kind of planning on doing, and I should say we're having camp. That's that's me talking. Of course, I still have to run this through my local board and make sure we have state permission, but it's my goal to have summer camp because of how important it is. But anyway, so we have 6-foot tables. And so I figured since the distancing guideline is 6 feet, every child will have their own table with their own supplies. I mean, it's not going to be camp as usual with everybody running around. But we do a teacher component, like a science and nature learning component anyway, that takes up the whole morning. And the kids pretty much are sitting at their own, you know, little area. So I think it can be done if we get really, really creative. The afternoon's going to be a little harder. I know Lori Berry has asked Mary Beth Burks from Cranberry. I don't know if Mary Beth is out there, but she runs their like pre-K to K to come up with some really good activities for us to do that don't involve, you know, the kids touching each other. It's going to be hard, but I don't know. I mean, I just think we can do it. I do.
I see Joanne. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, but I've looked into different things, and even those ionizers, CDC says as soon as somebody touches something, it's contaminated again. So you can ionize a bathroom, you can ionize your tables, but as soon as another child touches it, then where do we go from there? That's the biggest fear with this whole thing. I mean, are people going to have to wear masks? Are the counselors?
Yes.
You know, counselors are minors sometimes. So where are we at with that? What about hazard pay situations? We're really up in the air over the situation because we're not sure where it's going to go to.
I totally get what you're saying. So we're not going to hire anybody that's under the age of 18 this year. We're only going to have, and I probably might be recruiting some parents to work part-time, because absolutely you're not going to be able to have the kids that are in the 10th, 11th grade range that really, you know, part of our mission is to help them grow up. We can't do that this summer. You know, we have to have people who are going to make sure that whatever guidelines and rules and protocols we put in place are being followed strictly. So that would be one, and then I'll stop because, you know, I know everybody else has a lot to say too, but I really am on just such a mission. If it can be done, I think we should do it, because it is part of what we should be doing as municipal government, you know, to help in this crisis in any little way that we can.
Yeah, and I think we all agree. I just want to, Joanne Morris, you've had your hand up for a little bit now, so I do see you. I just unmuted you, or I'm trying to unmute you if it works. You might need to unmute on your end. There you go. Go ahead and say what you, I know you've been wanting to say it.
Joanne Morris, Municipality of Monroeville. I'm on the east side of Pittsburgh, across from Alois. My concern, in addition to everything I've heard, is we have mostly an outdoor day camp, and I have at least 40 campers every week. We go on Thursdays on a field trip. We get these kids on a school bus. How do you do that? Then the field trips we're going to are like amusement parks, Idlewild, Kennywood, the zoo, the museum. Like, are these even venues going to be applicable this summer? So then that's like part of your camp falling apart right there, because that's part of why the parents are sending their kids to camp, is to do things with them that they're unable themselves to do during the summer. So, I mean, I agree with everybody. I normally have a 9 to 10 week camp. I've already cut off the first week of camp. We were supposed to start June 8th. I've moved it back to June 15th. I just don't know what to think or do at this stage. There's no answers, and I almost wish this was happening after a year of school, that there was some guidelines set that we knew where to go from a little bit. But like, we're kind of the guinea pigs in all this right now. So that's my thoughts and concerns.
We actually had a bunch of field trips lined up as well already, once a week for the 10 weeks of the summer. And, we're kind of looking at it like, we haven't canceled all the field trips because we don't really know where we're going to be in August, or, what's going on. Who knows? Maybe it'll go well. But we've pretty much planned to kind of put a pin in what we've already reserved. Obviously, if we've scheduled a field trip to an amusement park and that park's not open, clearly that field trip is not happening. So our rec board recommended that we consider trying to find alternate themes, maybe bringing in like someone to hold something on a certain day rather than the field trip that we previously had planned. Just kind of keeping it campy and fun for the kids. But I think, like, for us, it's a lot like Eloise said, it's a necessary service. It's childcare for families that don't have childcare. So we feel an obligation to at least provide the bare bones, make sure the kids are getting care, make sure they're having a good summer. Probably not all the bells and whistles that we like to normally do, but that's kind of the trade-off. So what we're looking into is, like I said, on the weeks that we know for sure, June, July, that the field trips are probably not going to be feasible, what can we bring in as an alternative? We have a guy that we work with on the board who does like conservation. He does like reptile shows and things like that. Is it good to bring him in and do something out on the soccer field for a day where the kids can, watch him do a demonstration with his animals instead of the thing we were going to do that day. But I mean, I hear you. It's a lot of, like, we spent all this time planning and getting everything ready, and there it sits, and now we can't do it. But we're really just taking it one field trip at a time when it comes to that. We haven't called our August people and said, hey, don't expect us. But in the back of our heads, we're like, well, we probably won't be able to do these.
But what about busing?
Yeah, well, again, if we can't, I mean, if we're at a point by whatever time that we can't do a field trip, then theoretically busing is not going to be an option either.
I mean, I'm even concerned at lunchtime. We have a big pavilion, they
Yeah.
sit at tables. That's part of camp, the friendships and the time you
I
spend
know.
together. And now we're going to put like maybe one kid on each end of the table, maybe. And I don't know.
Nikki,
Yeah.
now is anybody reducing the price of their camp? If you're like, with my camp, my field trips are incorporated into the cost of the camp. So, with canceling field trips, does that now alter the price of your camp?
I had a parent email me about summer camp, and she really wants us to do it, but we're trying to consider everything, whether it's safe or not. but she even just mentioned in there, like, even if we can't do the same field trips, like, I still want to send my kids. So I think at least in her case specifically, she's not really worried about whether or not the field trips are the same, but just childcare for her kid. But I can't say that that's exactly what everyone else feels either. Talking with my staff, we were thinking of maybe getting a survey together to see what exactly the parents want. Not that we might be able to give it to them, but just to kind of have an idea of whether they feel like it's safe to bring their kids to camp, if they're still interested, if they'd rather just not do it all together, if they want refunds, which opens up, you know, that whole thing of whether or not we're able to do that or what we could do. But also see if they're interested in some type of virtual thing or if that's kind of overdone with the school year. So I feel like we're in the same boat as everyone, but yeah, at least with the field trip thing, one parent said that it didn't matter to her, if that helps.
I just want to go. Oh, I'm gonna tell. What did you needed to?
I just wanted to say that whoever Jennifer Feen is put very good information up here in regards to camp preparation for 2020 with COVID-19, and it's an ACA event May 7th at 2.
I have the link, and I'm going to share that with the group. I asked her to send that.
Thank you. I think that everybody's going about all the things that could happen and couldn't happen. And I think, like, just my opinion is everybody just needs to be patient, take a step back, and we have to wait for direction. We are not healthcare professionals, and that we just have to start planning on what you think would be the best plan for your community. And I know Christy's on here, and I'm not sure who else is from Central PA, but we're having our own roundtable because somebody else mentioned about this will be opened up according to where you live. I agree with that. Under the Governor Wolf's plan that Josh put on the resource page, that we are essential services. Our parents need to go back to work, and when they want to go back to work, then we have to be ready to go, and we're going to have to follow whatever guidelines are in front of us. And it's not going to be easy, but we're essential, and we'll have to make all these plans that you guys are just flying around about later. We don't know. We're not healthcare professionals. So I think it's more important to have plan A, B, C, D, and you better have your ducks in a row, what you can and cannot do, and throw ideas about what you can do. Who has ideas about how to have a game with 10 kids without touching each other right now? Because we're going to need it. You know, how are you going to set up your lunch area? You know, where are you going to have them 6 feet apart? Is it okay that they're on the ground and they bring their own rug? I mean, these are the things we need to think about and not be worried about what's going to happen, because we're in the second phase of opening up. That's just my opinion. So I think these Google Docs that Beth did and that you started are awesome, because we are changing every 24 hours. Something changes every 24 hours. So if you see something change or you get notification of something, please go to those Google Docs and add it, and everybody knows about it within 24 hours, and we don't have to wait till the next time we have one of these. You can go into those Google Docs and see what's been edited and changed.
I agree. And I do want to say we have a representative from the Department of Health who is doing a webinar for us, and we are to provide him with predetermined questions that he can do a little research on and provide hopefully the answers at our webinar. So if you have specific questions, if you can email me those questions.
Can we put them in Google Docs?
You can put them in the Google Doc, absolutely. That link.
I put another link on there because we're going to want to know what's being added there.
Yeah, you can. I already shared the link to Google Doc. It'll go out again in the follow-up email. We can add a tab to that Google Doc, and I'll just note it DOH questions.
Because I got a lot.
Yeah, we will ask that gentleman. What we'll do is we'll kind of compile them, and hopefully he can address as many of those as possible. And it won't just be camp related, it will also touch on aquatics and whatever other facility and park and rec questions we have. But hopefully some of those questions can be clarified when he does his presentation. It won't be a roundtable like this because I'm sure the poor gentleman will have enough questions to answer. But please, yes, let me add a tab after this call is over. Or if someone can do that now, tell Josh, anyone who is on the phone, Beth, if you have access to that Google Doc while we're speaking, please do that. I also want to note that there are a ton of questions in the chat box that we just haven't had a chance to answer. But please, if there's one that you've asked and we haven't had a chance to address that and you feel it's vital that we do that right now or today, please just ask it again. We've had a lot of great responses. The field trips, a lot of people are canceling them. There's concern over busing. I think, Melissa, you mentioned having those people come in and do presentations versus going to their sites. That's a great idea. One big thing that's been asked multiple times I've seen in the chat box is, are you cutting down the number of campers you're taking in? A lot of you have started registration and continue to take registration. So how is that impacting you? If you've filled your camps, I know some of you may have filled your camps already. How do you handle that? If we are given, you know, guidelines to say you can only have 20 kids and your camp is already full of 50 kids, how is that going to work? So how are you working with the number of registered campers you're able to take at this point?
I was thinking about a lottery system and somehow try to prove who is essential services, like who has to go to work. And I don't know how you do that. So if anybody has any idea, but those were my first two thoughts.
Oh, this is Christy from Silver Spring. I think that's a good idea. We were just talking about, on a separate note too, like parents that are laid off and are not getting like a full paycheck, being a little bit more lenient with those families and setting them up on payment plans. Because I had a parent call me this morning asking, you know, is my full balance due by the deadline? And I said, no, we're gonna, you know, redo like our deadlines for all of our payments. So we're trying to make adjustments right now to allow families who are kind of in a tough spot to go on payment plans so they can afford the program. And then we're being, I think, a little bit more lenient too with the refund process, understanding families who might need that refund. And we also might even cap our registration where it's at right now. We're not at full registration right now, but we might end up capping it maybe next week or 2 weeks from now when things get more strict. Kind of looking at it that way as far as our numbers go, because we think we might need more staff to break the kids into smaller groups. And it's tough to do that when you're at full capacity. If your ratios are like 10 to 1, we're looking at our ratios being a little bit more higher, and that might be something that, you know, will help us a little bit too. So that's just kind of where we're at with that.
How many?
Hey, Nikki, this is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask if anybody has thought about employing a healthcare professional like a school nurse, and if you have done so and what their pay would be.
That's a great idea. We had a school nurse the first year of camp, just during the time when the kids were actually in the building at the high school. I think we paid them about $25 an hour. She really didn't have much to do. So the second year we decided not to have the school nurse, but that is a great idea. And a lot of like the nurse that we had went to multiple schools. So she was familiar with a lot of the kids in the area too, you know, that come to camp. I hadn't thought of that. Thank you.
Is anyone experiencing, you know, for those of you that are still planning on doing camps, for us, staffing is kind of an issue at this point where we're not getting the selection of applicants that we've had in previous years, and kind of with, you know, things on hold now. When we get the go ahead to go and hire staff, they're now required to do, you know, have their background checks, and, you know, that's going to be delayed, you know, possibly in some way, shape, or form. You know, now I have a staffing issue, you know, with my camps. I don't know if anybody's kind of thinking in that direction as well.
Tyler, before we answer that, Tyler, did you have something to say before?
Yeah, I was just going to, I'm Tyler from the Township of Upper St. Clair, so Western PA, more in the South Hills. We are in a little bit of a different spot, I'll be quite honest, from, some in the central part of the state that, their camps are essential childcare. We do run both a preschool and a youth camp, but they are, I wouldn't, parents don't necessarily rely on them as childcare. It's more to provide their children, with an enrichment. So I think for us, what we've really been doing, we are having the same issue with staffing. We haven't really had any applications because everything's kind of on hold. And in terms of our numbers, we're kind of going off of what the state of Georgia and Alabama, they've released their state guidelines, which I'll be quite honest, where it seems pretty rash and they're not great, but it does kind of give you an inkling on what every state's going to be doing. And obviously Governor Wolf released his last night, and we're preparing for a scenario, all scenarios like Tanya had mentioned. One of ours is, maybe doing a little more of an a la carte style where it's 10 kids in each group and they're meeting for limited periods of time. Again, I'm recognizing that our facility, we're not using it as essential childcare. Our priority for our parents and families, I'm sure as most, is to get their kids back in school in the fall. So we wouldn't want to put ourselves in a situation where we're offering something in a large amount and then there's some type of an outbreak that could affect the fall. So we're looking at everything as spacing it out best we can. We're recognizing that workers might not have the same schedules going into the summer, that it's not a 7 to 3 or an 8 to 4, 9 to 5 job world right now. And I would argue that it's probably not going to be that same way. We have quite a few people that are teleworking. So that might allow a parent to drop off their kid at an 11 o'clock time slot is versus that traditional 9 o'clock time slot. So we're kind of just waiting and seeing. I thought, Tanya, you had a really good point. We're just going to kind of see how things go, but we're definitely prepared for a limited number scenario, more a la carte type option, I think, if we have to.
Hey, Nikki, it's Dan Russell here. We're in Montgomery County, King of Prussia, just right outside Philadelphia. I just wanted to share with everyone, after Governor Wolf's update last night, we received a little bit of information from our state rep, which, is it's not 100% clear, but there was a couple things in there that I thought would be important to share with folks today. One of the things that we've all been talking about here is, hearing of, new guidelines and guidance and things like that. What he provided in his update is that the state is obviously going to follow this color coding system, red, yellow, green. A couple of the things that he, I'm just reading it here, that he, described was, regardless of the academic year in schools, schools aren't going to open until certain areas have reached green status, regardless of the academic year. And he's stating that the schools aren't going to open in the summer if you're not in the green status. So I'm a little concerned about that. The other thing that he mentioned is any sort of recreational or social gatherings will not be allowed until the green status is reached. I just wanted to share that with you because we received that last night. And I know a lot of us have really close relationships with our state reps because we rely on them for lots of things, including grant things. So if you do have a good relationship with your rep, reach out to them and see if you can get some clarifications. I've reached out to ours this morning to kind of discuss with him what he released last night on his social media. And I just thought it was pretty interesting information that went above and beyond what Governor Wolf said last evening.
Dan, that's great information. Thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, if you don't know who your state rep is, it's easily found on the internet. And I'm glad that they were able to share that information. I think that's vital to the majority of people on this call who do use the school facilities for their programs, whether it's summer camp or even looking into fall, because you don't know how long this is going to last. So thank you so much. Good information, not great to hear. So I'm just going back and looking through. There is no word yet on provisional hiring, Tug. I know that's one question. We have not heard anything. My one question to Tim was, who's going to be police? If we are able to open and go out into the world, with all the COVID issues, I'd be curious of who's actually going to be that concerned with it at this point. Just playing devil's advocate from my side, I was like, well, you know, are they going to be concerned with that at this point? I know it's a big issue, but they have a lot of other big issues. Going back through the chat box, a lot of it came back to hiring returning counselors because they know their clearances are still good. Maybe no 16 and 17-year-olds this year, keeping with 18 and older. Some people are fully staffed at this point already. FBI finger check locations are not open. That's pretty much the chat has pretty much been regarding staffing at this point. Sarah Sato did mention that they have a staff member who is also an RN. So she's working with the assistant camp director and program coordinator. So that's pretty lucky for her. Just going through to see if we can look at any other questions that we haven't hit.
I like that one from Josh, if anybody has information. He just posted, do we know if summer camps, if we're not an accredited childcare organization, does that fall in the yellow zone? That's a really great question for the state reps. Because that's one that I'm not sure of either. I would assume, you know, we're full-time program, but I don't know because we're not an accredited childcare facility.
I had the same question. I'm Michelle from Bethel Park Recreation. In regards to that yellow zone where it says large gatherings of more than 25 are prohibited, and then we're recreation, and it says any indoor recreation facilities have to remain closed. And my camps take place in recreation facilities. So
the one thing I can say, and because there's so many people on the call right now, I'm not sure if anyone is on, but for the facilities who have gone through the childcare licensing process, it's not that easy. And I'm not, if any of our members are on here who have gone through that process, please speak up, because I know it's a difficult process. And I know some people, I believe out in District 1 have gone through it. It's a more difficult process as far as what staff you have managing it, all the requirements you have to meet.
Nikki, I can speak to that.
Thank you.
If you are not a licensed child care facility, there is no way that you could get it between now and summer. It took us easily 4 to 6 months, and that was being pushed. So, and it is very cumbersome. And you need to have, the very first person you have to hire is somebody that has that has a degree in early childhood education. So,
so is it fair to say then that if we're not licensed, then we don't fall into that category?
I don't think it's fair to say that, because if you try to tell your parents, if you have a camp of 40, 50 kids and you try to tell them that you're not essential and you're not opening, I think I'd tell our parents to start calling representatives, because I look at it as we are essential. So we have a licensed child care program and we have a summer camp program, 2 separate entities, okay? We are not running the licensed child care in the summer. We're running the camp that is not licensed. I think if we told our parents we weren't opening based on what the governor red, yellow, green, and I think it will be an all-out war if that happens. And I think it's a question for our local representatives now, you know, that Dan brought that about right there. I mean, we probably should be reaching out to them and saying, look, we're falling in these gray lines and people are counting on us if they're going to go back to work. It's going to get ugly.
Well, and I think this falls back right into that preschool protocol in Act 47 with provisional hiring. This is the area we've been fighting for how long now, in saying that, you know, PRPS and the rest of the state saying that what we do is, it's been the fight that, you know, Tug, you know what I'm talking about. And
Yeah, exactly. I think we
that
need
might
to
be the time where it helps us. If they say that we can't open because we're not childcare and we have to tell our parents that and our parents are calling.
I think we need to get this to the Governmental Affairs Committee. We need to take it to Doug now.
Yes.
And can you do that, or you or
Yeah.
Dan?
Yeah, I'll email Tim and Doug after this and just bring it up that we need some clarification at that point.
Thank you.
One thing I would add too about this is we started already calling our parents and just talking to them, because we already have like 50 families that are signed up that we're going to service, you know, hopefully this summer, that we just tried to get a sense of, are they going back to work? You know, what is the long-term prognosis, if you will, where they're working? Is it essential for them, or is it just something that they did as enrichment, like the guy from, I forget where, was talking about? But I think it's good for us to start talking to the parents now, because if the time comes when, as you say, we're shut down because we're not licensed, but we are essential, then it's going to be easier to get some action. But yesterday we started calling our parents just to say we don't know what we're doing. Sorry, go ahead.
That's okay.
Sorry.
that's the fun of Zoom, right? But I was just going to say that we've decided that I think we are going to survey our parents as well. At first I was like, oh, but it really, now hearing it and talking to people, I think it's a good idea. Just more kind of keeping it general of, are you going back to work? Are you planning with all the, you know, things that are going on? Or do you feel comfortable sending your kids to camp? Would you feel comfortable with sending them to the pool, field trips, just to get a notion? And we put verbiage in there that we're not making any promises. We're just trying to get a feel for what people are thinking so that we can continue to provide the best programs that we can in a safe environment. So we're leaving it very wide open, but I agree with you, Eloise, in the sense that I think it's good to, if you have that ability, to reach out to these folks. Plus, I also have tons of families who have already registered since February. So now it's going back and deciding, okay, am I changing everything? And am I refunding them for everything they've already paid for, and we're starting over? So that's a huge part too. So I think the communication just helps with all of that.
I just want to mention that Gina, I can't remember where you're from, but mentioned that she had reached out to DHS regarding Act 47, and an expected response from them essentially is saying that you can't hire people on a provisional basis, which falls in line with, they haven't done anything to change their minds at this point. It says that at the Senate and House level, they will not be back in session until next for further discussion. This is something we hear nonstop, is that they won't be back in session. They won't be back in session. So there have been a lot of people who have contacted their representatives about this. So hopefully those, you know, actions that our members have taken will be helpful, but we just have to keep calling and making our voices heard. And Michelle, if anyone has the surveys that they're sending, can you please share those with us on the Google Doc so other people can get an idea of what those look like? I think that would be very helpful. Again, we can either make another tab or just we'll add a section in there. So thank you. We have about 15 minutes left. So what are some of the questions that we need answered today that we haven't been able to address? I know there's probably a million that I haven't hit in the chat box. So please feel free to speak up or let us know in the chat.
I just wanted to bring up, I'm at Phoenixville Rec in Chester County. Talking about surveys, parents we're kind of in this position where there's so many factors. We normally run our camps at schools, so we're not sure if we're going to be able to run our camps at schools. If we move them outside, do we have indoor space for inclement weather? If we do have indoor space for inclement weather, can we have that many people inside at one time? There's so many factors. So parent survey was one thing that in the interim we've decided to send out, but we're also polling our staff as well, because I feel like we have a lot of returning staff that already have their clearances and things in place, but we're kind of in that place where we are still trying to hire but our numbers might be reflected simply on the staff that we can bring in. And so if our staff members don't feel comfortable coming back to work, you know, we're concerned that that's going to change everything as well. So we're not just surveying our parents, but we're also putting something out to our staff just to say, how are you feeling about this? Are you able to come back? Do you feel comfortable coming back? Because we're kind of concerned that we'll set guidelines and then we're going to have to change them again because we don't have the correct staffing in place. So just a thought.
Great. Joanne?
Well, my problem is too, normally by now we would have half of our camp filled. We have maybe 1/10. And it's mostly because parents are scared. They don't know what to expect. So I'm even with staffing in general concerned. I don't want to say you're hired all these people and then not need them. So I'm actually making a minimum of how many people I have to even hold camp. I put our brochure just went to print a couple days ago. I'm saying I at least have to have 10 campers, because if I don't have 10 campers at least, financially, it's not going to make any sense to hold camp. You know, so it's a catch-22 all around.
I think too, like somebody was just saying in the chat box about the whole 25 people gathering, like I'm thinking about our program and how we have so many kids, like we almost have to split into like 3 groups. And if we do that, we talked about like outdoor facilities as like alternative locations. Well, yeah, that works for like, you know, your program, but if you're limited on what you can, how many kids you can put in one space, now we have to look at different options for outdoor spaces, because how am I going to separate into 3 groups if I only have 2 picnic pavilions? You know, and if there's inclement weather and we got to go inside, there's not enough space to separate into 3 groups. So now we're in an even more, you know, even a bigger dilemma now, trying to figure out what we're going to do. So I think the 25 number is really going to have a lot of us hung up on what we can really do to separate if we're stuck in that yellow category for, you know, the next 2 months, 3 months.
There's a great question from Ashley in the chat box. When you pull 100+ camp families and the majority anticipate needing camp, how do you determine who will get to register if camp groups are limited, or if you've already reached capacity of that group limit? I know some people, the lottery was mentioned. Some people said start with who registered first. So just wanted to mention that question from the chat box. Also, I did put the Google Doc link up again. Sorry, my brain was pausing on me. Any thoughts on Ashley's question? Any other questions? I know, so we are going to ask our governmental affairs group to reach out about where do rec centers fall in that yellow-green line. That question's been asked a few times. I don't think any of us know at this point. So PRPS will reach out and see if we can clarify that. So we will try to start doing that today. I'll work with our CEO and our governmental affairs group to see if we can clarify that, because obviously that's something that's very important. A great question. If you're doing virtual camp, which I know some people are, do you plan to charge for that? And what platform are you going to use for virtual camp?
Nikki, not to change the subject, but I just wanted to touch on what you just said. It specifically spells out all indoor recreation, community centers, health and wellness facilities. They will remain closed through the yellow. So okay. For yellow and red, they'll remain closed. They won't be allowed to open until the green.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm Melissa from Briarwoods Nature Center in Abington, and the staff and I just kind of had a brainstorm meeting about the fact that, if we can't really be in person for camp, if parents want something, maybe we can offer something virtually like we have been for the students in the schools, and even some parents who typically come to in-person programs who now can't, but they still want to do something with their kids. It's a lot to consider because, we can make certain things, activities, send all that in some way, do some Zoom meetings with the kids. It's definitely something to consider whether or not they still want online things, if they have access to the internet, and even, how much we charge, because it's definitely not going to be what we have charged for these camps, and thinking about refunding. Are the parents even going to want to, or are they just going to want a complete refund and not do anything virtual? It would definitely take a lot of time, and we're kind of at that point now where it's almost May, and it would take some time to, come up with a format and record videos, edit certain things, create activities, and we're just kind of wondering, is the time that we would put into doing all of this be worth what we would charge, and also would we have enough people, like wanting to do that for it to be worth it? So I'm planning on surveying the parents, but we're kind of unsure about what something virtual would be like. So I'm curious to hear if anyone else has thought of anything, whether that's a format or what you're asking in a survey or something like that.
Mandy from Center Region Parks and Recreation, just to add to what Melissa was saying, if parents are bringing their kids to us for childcare, what would make them opt into a virtual? What's the appeal of this virtual option?
I had a coworker who asked her neighbor, who is involved in our summer camp programs and some others. She has 3 young boys, and she comes to our camps for childcare, and it's also just, a fun experience. But she said that if it came down to the fact that we wouldn't have in-person camps, she would probably not do anything virtual because it's hard to keep her kids' attention online for so long. Not that we would do a full day of camp anyway online. It might wind up only being a few hours of some like supplemental activities for them to do. But she said that she would wind up just hiring a babysitter who would be, one person with the kids throughout the summer, instead of paying for any kind of virtual thing. Now, whether she changes her mind to have the babysitter involved in some type of virtual thing with the kids is another thing, but it seems like at least one parent would just find a babysitter at that point instead of going virtual.
Yep.
I would just like to echo, again, Keith Karowski, Westchester Parks and Recreation. My camp team has been looking at the virtual aspect as well, and it feels like we're in a bit of a catch-22 where, again, someone else posted, are kids really going to be interested in a virtual program after doing virtual schooling for the last 6-8 weeks? And then if you go through all that time and effort of putting together a virtual program and things progress hopefully well, and we're allowed to go back to an in-person camp, it almost seems, and I hate to use the term, but a wasted time to do that. And then the virtual aspect that, again, one of my camp staff asked was, from a virtual aspect, well, you only need virtual if mom and dad are home, or mom or dad is home to be able to help them, maybe with the computer, with the programming. But again, according to Mr. Wolf, Governor Wolf, May 8th is when we open up the doors and people start going back to work. So it seems like the only reality is going to be having essential childcare, which I believe all of us are. When mom and dads are going back to work, the kids need to go somewhere. Again, I can't leave my 7-year-old here while doing a virtual program while me and mom aren't home. So again, it seems like, again, we're all waiting in that waiting holding pattern to see when these colors change. And again, there's no telling when that red may go to yellow and hopefully to green, and then oops, we're back to yellow and we're back to red. Again, I think it was Tanya said earlier, we're just literally just tied to what the government's going to tell us, and A, B, C, D, E, F, G plans, a lot of planning, a lot of work, possibly a lot of it for naught. Just my thoughts.
All right, so we're close to wrapping up. We've had so much great discussion both live and in the chat. Again, I haven't been able to keep it up at all, I'm not gonna lie, but we will make sure we get the chat discussion out to everyone because I think there's a lot of other feedback that you'll be able to see. A couple reminders, we will have that DOH webinar available at some point. Please, I think we'll add 2 tabs to the Google Doc. We'll add one for DOH questions, but I think we've had so many questions on this roundtable that we weren't able to answer yet, that I think we can add those questions to the Google Doc as well. And then we can have some question and answer up there that we can address one on our next roundtable. And then if there's questions that we need to answer before that event, we can answer them in that Google Doc because I think this has been really beneficial. Right now I'm putting up in the chat box, PRPS is doing a member survey where you can add some information about if you have anything that's closed, but also if you want to share your story about how you're handling COVID. So I put that link up. If you want to share, please do. But also want to mention that next Wednesday, April 29th at 1 o'clock, we do have the outdoor summer camp roundtable. So we'll be working on that to make sure that we address specifically outdoor programming for summer camps. If there's any last minute questions, we can address those. If not, we'll keep this open a few more minutes for you to access the Google Doc, to access the survey. I want to thank you all for participating in the roundtable. It's because of you that we get such great information, and we thank you for taking the time out to join us. There is a password for the summer camp roundtable. I will email it to everyone that has joined us today and share their email address in the chat box. So if you didn't do that yet, please do. I will make sure you get it. Right now, we're still limited to 100 people per roundtable. We're trying to up that to 300 because these have been very popular, and we want to make sure that we can provide that service to everyone. Again, thank you so much. We really appreciate it, and I wish you the best of luck with all your programs, events, summer camps, everything that you're doing, and thank you for what you do.
Excuse me, before everybody signs off, I'm sorry, I'm just noticing, I thought I came in without video, and I've been to the side taking notes and some other work. It came up about a half an hour ago. Somebody had asked, what can you do now? And I was going to go in then. There's something out there that would be useful for you personally. I'm sure most of you are in touch with your parents and things like that, because I've been doing this with parents and with kids. I have this set up because it's basically I do something called laughter yoga, which is a free program. And basically it's a cardio workout. All you do is laugh. Just think about it. You get, your energies go up, your cortisol goes down, all that stuff. I put my email and laughter yoga in the comments. And this is something I've been doing for a couple of years. It was started by a medical doctor in India. And there's maybe some instructors in your area. What I've been doing is setting up these instructors to reach out to people to say, hey, I can do this. I can do a Zoom session. It's with kids, we do it. With senior citizens, I do it. It's in the Mayo Clinic. It's all this stuff. So if you're looking to do something, just send me an email. I may have somebody in your area that can do something, which is, basically it's very simple and all you do is laugh. It's exercises. There's no jokes, humor, anything like that. And you can go to laughteryoga.org for the international group, which is based in India. And sorry, you've been looking at a sign because I'm set up for the classes and whatnot. So apologies for not having the visual. I thought I was on audio. Thank you. Nice meeting everybody.
Thank you. And I did see a question. Will we have another one of these? Absolutely. We'll do it again in about 10 days to 2 weeks. So not next week, the week after. If this date and time works for everyone, like the Thursday, 10 o'clock, that's what we try to keep with. Seems like we had a good turnout, so it works. And again, thank you. I'll leave this open for a few more minutes in case there's any last minute chat. But we will see you again very soon. Thanks.